Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura. And let's flip and stitch, quilt as you go, use leftover fabric, use new fabric, use jelly rolls, old batting, new batting, all while making a table runner. I like to start with my batting, and this is where the old batting and new batting comes in because the choice is going to be yours. If you want an exact size, you'll need to start with a new piece of batting and cut it to the size you want. I like to do this project with something that was left over, something that I had that was long and thin. The next thing is the backing. I want the backing to cover the entire piece of the batting. Then I get to choose fabrics for the top. And this is where your jelly roll, leftovers, or new come in. I'm going to make this with a combination of leftovers and new cuts. I have a leftover block, and that's what I'm going to use for the center. From there, I have all of these strips that I've cut. Some of them were leftovers from previous projects, and some of them I've just pulled out of the stash to add a little extra color. The width of the strips can be any width you want. The length will be determined on the size of your batting. So we're going to start in the middle of the table runner and go out. So I want both sides to look the same, but it's not necessary. It can be totally scrappy if you'd like. My batting is 15 inches by 45 inches. I'm going to need 2 strips no less than 8 inches and 2 strips no less than 11 inches. So I'm going to need one 9-inch and one 11-inch for one side, and again the 9 and the 11-inch for the other side. I have 4 strips of fabric cut in each of my colors. And my center block. Now the center block is just a leftover block that I had, and it started at 8.5-inch square. What's really important about the strips are that the lines are very straight. I have a very straight cut at the ends, and the edges are very straight. Doesn't matter how wide they just need to be straight. And then I want to make sure that when I do sew them, I don't stretch them. So I use a little portable iron with just a small amount of heat, and it's going to help me from not stretching those. Make sure your batting has no wrinkles on it and it lies nice and flat because you're going to quilt as you go. You need to baste these 2 layers together. Now you can hand baste them, machine baste them, or spray baste them. I wouldn't recommend pin basting because you won't see the pins if you pin from underneath. And when they're basted together, you need to draw 2 lines. One going right through the center and then one going end to end. If you're having problems finding that center line, get a nice big long ruler and lay that on top of the fabric and the batting. And then take this and fold it right in half, matching up the edges. And while you hold those edges together, you're going to be able to take that ruler and slide it so that it touches right there along that back end. Smooth your fabric and keep that ruler tight right against that seam. Hold the ruler down and lift up your fabric. That edge there is going to be the center of the fabric. And before I move it, I'll just draw my line. So that will be my center line. Find the center of this line and draw your lines out. Put a square of some sort in the center. Now you can just fussy cut a piece of fabric out, or you can use an old block. I'm going to match up the 4 corners with those 4 lines. I'm going to put a little bit of that spray adhesive just to hold it into the position I want, but you can use pins. And I'm just going to stitch in the ditch to the block. The center has been quilted on. Now we're going to be able to add all those strips of fabric starting from the center out. Now the choice is yours if you want to work on one side at a time or equally work on one piece, then the next, and go out. The choice is yours. First thing we need to do is start with the smallest piece that we've cut in those strips. I have 2 small strips and 2 long strips. I'm going to start with the smallest piece, and I'm going to continue that smallest piece on that one side. So choose the side you want. I like it to be closest to me, and I mark it. Now I know that this will always be my starting piece, and it will always be the smallest strip. So I take that small strip and I'm going to match it along that edge, matching up that top corner. The straight edge matches here and all the way down. Your strip will need to be longer than this piece. You might have it so that it comes right off, and that's fine. As long as you have at least a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch coming off this edge, you're going to be fine. And stitch a 1/4 inch down all the way, coming right off of that piece. With that first piece stitched on, this is where the stitch and flip comes in, because I'm going to be able to just flip it to the right side, and I want to press that seam. I do not need this to stretch, so I want to be very careful with the pressing, and that's why I like to use a light iron. You can just press with your hand if you'd like. You've started with the short, the next is going to be the long. This time I'm going to use the top edge here to match up. I'm matching up that top and the edges, and I'm going to be able to stitch a 1/4 inch from that top all the way down. You've stitched, now you're going to flip. And just flip that over and press that seam flat. You will have kept a nice straight corner as you go along. I like to flip and do the second side, so I'm going to be working out. So I'm going to take this and flip it so it's facing me. The piece that is facing me is going to be the small piece. I'm going to lay it right along the edge, just like I did the first one, and I'm going to be stitching right over top of that last piece that I did. All of this will be trimmed off after. Now I can flip that over and press that seam down. The long one is going to go on next, matching up that top piece, the edge, and right off. So just match up your seams and sew that 1/4 inch. When it's done, flip it and press it. By stitching through all of the layers, you're quilting as you go, so you won't have to quilt this when you're done. So the piece facing me is going to be the short piece, and I'm going to always start with this corner piece, match up that corner and the edge coming down, stitch the 1/4 inch. Stitched, flip, and press. And I'm going to put that next piece here, but it's going to be the long piece. I'm matching up that straight edge. I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch. This side's done. I'm able to flip and do the second side. Always starting with the small piece facing me. And do the same on this side. It's going to look like you have a piece that is not long enough, but it's going to be the right size when it's trimmed down. You'll see as we go along. As we sew all of these strips on, you will notice that you will always see a little piece of fabric from the last one poking out. This is going to be trimmed off here, so these are all going to come off. If you are trying to match up this edge, you're going to have way too much fabric hanging out, and it's not needed. And now I'm running out of batting. So I have 2 choices to make. I can continue to fill up these corners and cut it as a square table runner, or I can end it and put a point on it. I'm going to show you both ways so you can decide. So this is going to be the end that I'm going to cut off square. So I've just kept adding until I've run out of the batting. So let's trim it up. So we're going to start with that center square, and that is our first corner that we started with. Each of these corners should line up, so it will be easy for us to line up the blocks and keep it square. We need to have minimum a 1/4 inch here on that first row that we did. And that way we're not going to be cutting into the center block. Now, if you'd like, you can go even bigger depending on how long your strips were. I'm going to do a 1/2 inch. I'd rather start with a 1/2 inch, and then if I want, I can trim it down. From those center points over, including that 1/2 inch seam allowance, It actually is 6 inches, and I happen to have a 6-inch ruler, so that works out perfect. And I just trim off all of that extra. Now I'm going to be able to repeat on this side. Now, if you're a little nervous cutting that off, you can draw your cutting lines first, and then make sure it's squared up, then cut it. So for that end that I'm going to cut square, I'm going to be able to use my 2 edges and trim off that extra. So that is how a flat end is going to look. With the point end, I need to just cut that extra fabric off. And that's how my pointed end looks. So we have the pointed end or the flat end. Before I put the binding on, I like to stitch all the way around the edges just to secure all of those threads because you've trimmed them off. And I do a scant 1/4 inch or even an 1/8 of an inch. And that's just going to hold them down and secure those threads. Then you can add your binding all the way around and you're done. So this is a stitch and flip, a quilt as you go, a leftover batting or a new batting, a jelly roll, a leftover fabric or fabric of your choices. However you make it, it's quick and easy. You can make it as long as you want and you can make it as wide as you want. In order to make it wider, you just need to start with a bigger square in the center, and that's going to make it wider. So it doesn't matter if you do the pointy end or the square end. It really is quick, easy, and fun to make. I do hope you give it a try, and as always, thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.